Making my way down Goblin Town. Goblins past, faces fast. Who likes goblins? Not me. I'm more of a zombie girl. I love zombies.
Hey, I'm a zombie.
But I've been forcefully coerced into playing with the funny little guys today. This is Goblin Combo, Pauper edition. In Strixhaven, they printed first day of class, which for a turn lets persist creatures come back from the graveyard forever. Like this guy, Putrid Goblin. That's actually not what the card says, but that's what it effectively does. So the plan is to make this little guy's life as miserable as possible by killing him 1,000 times over. These are our murderers. Skirk Prospector makes infinite mana. Goblin Slitter makes everyone swole. Dark Dweller Oracle lets us play our whole deck, and makeshift munitions go pew 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 pew. Had to mulligan down to 6. The first hand was unkeepable. This hand seems pretty good. We have some early drops in Goblin Surgeon and Skirk Prospector, and then we can draw more cards with the Village Rites. The Goblin Matron being able to find any goblin in our deck. So whatever we draw, if it's a combo piece or if it's something we can sacrifice to Village Rite, then Goblin Matron can find the other thing that we need. Snap keep, in my opinion. It's my first game of Goblin Combo in a competitive environment, and I start with the Skirk Prospector. It can attack, it can ramp, but even more importantly, if I get a Putrid Goblin on a first day of class off the top, I just combo off and win the game. My opponent plays a tapped land, and while I didn't get either of the things I needed, I attack for 1, and I drew the Mock War Marshal. It makes a 1/1 when it comes into play, and when it dies, it also has Echo, which means it dies unless I pay its Echo cost next turn. The Echo is 2 mana. Then I pass the turn, and I'm thinking at this point I have 3 1/1s. Maybe I can just beat my opponent to death with goblins. That would be fun. Having 2 goblins and a Skirk Prospector means next turn I can generate like 5 mana if I have a land, and that's enough to combo off. So this has to look very spooky for my opponent if they know how the combo works. So my hope is my opponent just builds his board up, and then I can try and combo off next turn. However, my opponent plays a Lumnarch Veteran. It's a 1/1 for 1 that gives you a life whenever a creature enters under your control. Then he lightning bolts my Skirk Prospector, and this is a good move. It stops me from having 5 mana on turn 3, and it's also one of my combo pieces, so I'll either have to find a new one or unearth it from the graveyard. On my turn, it's really important I don't draw a card, because I have to play this Village Rites in my upkeep to sacrifice the Mock War Marshal before it dies to the Echo cost. If I draw a card first, I have already gone past that trigger, and I can no longer cast Village Rite, technically. This way I get to sacrifice a creature that would have died anyway to my Village Rite, and it's basically 1 black to draw 2. Then I play the Goblin Surgeon with 2 goblins in play. That means if I get my combo online, I can protect myself from further lightning bolts, which is great here. Goblin Surgeon has the ability, sacrifice a goblin, regenerate target creature. So I can sacrifice those little goblins I'm attacking with. One of them doesn't have haste, so it can't attack this turn. And then I could regenerate one of the goblins I need for my combo. I currently have an Unearth to bring back the Skirk Prospector and a first day of class in my hand, along with a Goblin Matron, meaning I can find my full combo if my opponent doesn't do something to stop me. However, he has a really good play against my combo right now. He uses the Thrilling Discovery. As an additional cost, he must discard 2 cards from his hand, but then he gains 2 life and draws 3 cards. The cards he discards are both Prismatic Strands. Prismatic Strands let you choose a color, and then all damage from that color is prevented for a turn. And it has Flashback, tap a white creature. So as long as my opponent has 1 white creature in play, he can negate my entire combo. Then he plays a Sacred Cat, which is a 1/1 with lifelink, and you can also play it from the graveyard, or you can make a token of it from the graveyard if it's in your graveyard. My opponent gains a life off of that, and I play the Goblin Matron and find Putrid Goblin into my hand, and then I pass my turn. I only have 1 black mana, and Unearth costs black, and so does Putrid Goblin, so right now I can't combo off. I would need another Swamp, and even if I combo off somehow, I don't have a way to deal damage with it, and even if I did, my opponent could prevent all that damage, so I have to find a way around 2 Prismatic Strands and a lack of black mana. However, currently I'm not under a lot of pressure. My opponent has 2 1/1s and I'm still at 20 health. so I have plenty of time to find my way around all these cards. I can get Shred Memory and actually cast it from my hand to remove cards from my opponent's graveyard. He plays a Squadron Hawk, which allows him to find 3 more Squadron Hawks in the library and put them into his hand. This is usually done in combination with Brainstorm as some other way to put them on top of your library and shuffle them away, and basically just replace them with other cards. But in this deck, it seems to just be 2 mana 1/1 flyers, which isn't super scary, even if it's a lot of card advantage. However, my opponent has entirely stopped my dream of beating him to death with a couple of goblins, but that's not so surprising, to be honest. My opponent has to decide whether they want to attack with the Luminarch Veteran, but in this case, I kind of just want my Goblin Matron in the graveyard. I wouldn't care. Trading with his 1/1 would be great for me. Otherwise, I'll have to just sacrifice it to regenerate a Goblin later if I want to cast it from my graveyard. So I think it's correct of him to not attack. I have problems now because I have no ways to draw cards and therefore I have no ways to start doing my combo. This turn I attack for 3, putting my opponent down to 18. And now I have to do a play where I rely on my opponent seemingly not knowing my combo very well. So I will try to combo off and play this first day of class. I can't really combo off, I have no way to kill my opponent, but it does give me an introduction to Prophecy from my sideboard into my hand, which allows me to scry to and draw a card to find some sort of win condition. My opponent is kind of terrified because he knows I combo, he doesn't know what the combo is, and he needs to use Prismatic Strand to stop me if I combo. But I'm trying to bait one of the Prismatic Strands out of his hand. That would be perfect if that happened. Here I then play my Putrid Goblin. I don't care if it's in the battlefield because I can just regenerate it in case he tries to remove it. But now he goes into the thinker and goes, oh no, there's some sort of infinite loop happening. And I don't have to announce it. And if the infinite loop is lethal, he needs to use the Prismatic Strand now. Now, it wasn't lethal, so this was just kind of a bait. I sacrifice the Putrid Goblin to my Goblin Churchin and regenerate all my goblins infinitely. This doesn't actually accomplish anything, but it is very fun. To be fair, if I had another Swamp, I could cast Unearth on Skirk Prospector, and then I would have had infinite mana that turn, and with the introduction to Prophecy, I could have found a way to kill my opponent. But for now, my bluff got rid of one of the Prismatic Strands. My opponent played another Thrilling Discovery, gaining 2 life, discarding a Sacred Cat that can come back from the graveyard, or make a token of itself actually, and a Squadron Hawk, which they got for free from playing a Squadron Hawk, so that's really good card advantage. And he finally finds the card he's been looking for. It's called Basilisk Gate. For 2 mana and tap, it can give target creature +X, where X is the number of gates you control. It can only be activated as a sorcery. It's really good with a tiny flyer like Squadron Hawk, because then suddenly you have a huge flyer. My opponent only have 2 gates so far, so it only gives +2/+2. So it's still a significant improvement of a clock to kill me with over the pair of 1/1s that I can regenerate against. My opponent pumps one of the birds with the Basilisk Gate and hits me for 4 in the air, so I go down to 16. Now, I am a very lucky Magic player, and I have drawn my second first day of class, which is a really fun thing to say. Second first day of class, which means I can combo off this turn as well. However, there's still a Prismatic Strand in the graveyard, which is a massive problem for me. I kind of wish I had a black source that could deal damage or make my opponent lose life right now, because that way I could play around the Prismatic Strands. I use my Unearth to get back the Skirk Prospector. It's better to do it like this, because in case he exiles my graveyard or something, I wouldn't have blown the first day of class. I'd rather use that afterwards, because it doesn't matter if I play it first or later. My Unearth resolves and I get my Skirk Prospector back, and then I play the first day of class. It's on the stack. My opponent taps the Sacred Cat to play the Prismatic Strand with flashback from the graveyard, naming red, so this turn red sources do not deal damage to anything. First day of class resolves, and I go get another introduction to Prophecy from my sideboard into my hand. Then I kill Putrid Goblin infinite times, making infinite mana. With my infinite mana, I cast an introduction to Prophecy, scrying 2 and drawing a card. On the first 2 cards, I see a Goblin Matron and a Makeshift Munitions. I put the Goblin Matron back and keep the makeshift munitions, so I'm sure to have a win condition. Then I cast another Introduction to Prophecy, this time seeing a Storm Shriek Pharaoh and a Goblin Slitter. Here I make the choice of keeping the Goblin Slitter, even though I already have a win condition in makeshift munitions, so I should have kept the draw spell to dig further to find a new first day of class and get my third first day of class. What tricks me is I thought the Goblin Slitter could make the Putrid Goblin huge, but the Putrid Goblin is the creature I have to sacrifice, so I can't make that infinitely big, because whenever I buff it, it would then be sacrificed and lose that buff again. I then play the makeshift munitions, and this means I can deal infinite damage to everything, which I do, but it's all prevented. Then I play Goblin Slitter, and I realize I can't buff the Putrid Goblin. I can buff everything else. All my creatures are infinitely big. My opponent is taking infinite damage, and all my opponent's creatures are taking infinite damage. But I can't actually win because of the prismatic strands. The way I could have won was with the first Introduction to Prophecy. I saw a Goblin Matron. I should have played that, found Dark Dweller Oracle, and that would have allowed me to play my entire deck. And with my whole deck on the battlefield, I could have won the next turn. However, the game isn't over. I have a very large board of goblins, and if I draw another first day of class, I do just instantly win, because my opponent seems to have no more prismatic strands. But the problem is I'm hellbent. I have no more cards in hand. And now I'm starting to sacrifice my goblins with the makeshift munitions to kill the 1/1 birds. That way, the core gates can't buff them and I can't be killed. However, I should have probably done it in response to the Basilisk Gate buffing the birds. That would have been smarter, but right now I felt as if I just trade goblins for creatures, I will eventually win. But what I don't realize is most of the cards in my opponent's deck makes more than one creature. Like this Battle Screech, 4 mana, make 2 1/1 flyers. It has flashback, tap 3 white creatures, and then you create another 2. So my opponent plays it, and then plays it from the graveyard by tapping 3 of his creatures, creating 4 creatures in 1 turn. Now, I could have stopped the flashback by killing both of the creatures he had in play, but that would cost me way too much mana and creatures, as I would have to sacrifice goblins to Skirk Prospector, use that mana to sacrifice more goblins. So the idea of using my creatures to get rid of my opponent's creatures is a lot less interesting now. For my turn, I draw another Goblin Slitter, which is probably one of the worst draws I could get. It's a 1/1 that does nothing I don't already do. I can't really block my opponent's creatures because they all have flying, so I play my Goblin Slitter and then I attack with my goblins. Now I have to consider which goblins I'm willing to trade for 1/1s. I have a spare Goblin Slitter, so I have to send that one. I don't care if Goblin Matron dies, that just means it can come back from the graveyard in case I get an Unearth, and then it can find something in my deck that I need to win the game. My opponent simply takes the 4 and goes down to 20, and then I have to pass the turn. Once again, I have no cards in hand. However, a first day of class will just win the game, unless my opponent has a prismatic strand in hand, but we can see he doesn't. So now I just have to survive long enough to draw what I need to finish my opponent off, since I can't actually raise him on the board when he starts playing more creatures, since he has a lifelink and gains life when he plays creatures. He attacks with 4 1/1s and I go down to 12. I can't really raise my opponent because his creatures has lifelink. Whenever a creature enters, he gains a life. And all his creatures can also somehow make more creatures. Like this creature, the Sacred Cat. It can embalm for the graveyard for 1 white mana. When it enters, my opponent gains a life from the Luminarch Veteran. And it's also a 1/1 with lifelink. Embalm only works once, just like Flashback. But this does show that I am on the back foot now. I need to draw something good. My opponent just keeps playing creatures like the Scrotin Hawk, gaining life from it and putting more and more threats on the board. However, I can still counter the gates themselves by sacrificing 1 goblin. So the gates themselves aren't that powerful now. I want to sacrifice this Goblin Matron to kill one of the birds, which I realize I should do in response to an activation later, but the more life I can save, the better in my mind. I draw a mountain for my turn. That's absolutely atrocious. I need draw spells or I need first day of class. That's all I care about. I still attack for 3 because I don't mind trading with any of my opponent's creatures, and I can't actually block any of the flyers. However, what I don't manage to see is that this Luminarch veteran has Disturb, meaning when it's in the graveyard, you can cast it, and it comes back as a flyer. Meaning if I just let it live, that would be a creature I could actually block with one of my goblins. I attack and my opponent gains 1 life. That was a terrible attack, and I lose a goblin. At this point, all the goblins I have in play, I kinda need if I want to combo. I need the Scourge Prospector to make mana, the Putrid Goblin to sacrifice infinite, the Goblin Slitter to pump the others to be infinitely big, and the Surgeon to protect me from the lightning bolt that my opponent actually does have in hand. My opponent does disturb the Luminarch veteran, creating the Spirit that's a 1/1 flyer and says whenever one of your creatures die, you gain a life. So it's sort of the opposite. Before it said when you play a creature, now it says when a creature dies. It's kind of a weird little card. My opponent informs another cat. He doesn't have the second token, so he has to just use this little backside of a card, but that's fine. That happens a lot. Then I'm attacked for 4 in the air. There's still no activation of the Basilisk Gate because I could just shoot at the creature that it was being activated on. I take 4 damage. I don't sacrifice the Putrid Goblin because I do want to keep it. If it gets a minus counter on it, my combo no longer works. I draw a Duress and I see my opponent's hand and pick the Lightning Bolt. This is where we both kind of laugh, because why was that Lightning Bolt not used in response to the Duress? And my opponent does realize it's a mistake, but you know, it happens, and all you can do is laugh and have fun. I'm down to 8, so that Lightning Bolt, if it had gone face, I might be dead as my opponent has 5 flying power, or at least I would be forced to start sacrificing these essential parts of my combo. My opponent only has 6 power on the board right now, so he can't kill me by just swinging out. But he can kill me if he starts using that Basilisk Gate to buff up his creatures. And then he does it. He draws his second Basilisk Gate, meaning he can pump 2 creatures for 3 this turn. So I'm gonna have to start sacrificing my creatures to survive. He uses the first Basilisk Gate on one of the 1/1 flyers. And that means he has enough power in the air to kill me, so I have to sacrifice my Goblin Slitter and take it out before it's buffed. Then he plays the second Basilisk Gate and he does the same thing again. I choose to shoot that one as well by sacrificing my Surgeon. Looking at the board, I didn't have to. There was only 7 power and I have 8 life, so I could have just gone down to 1. But I want to preserve my life total to give myself as many draws as possible. My opponent attacks for 3, bringing me down to a total of 5. Life bar? There we go. Thank you. My opponent then continues to play more creatures, and this is probably my last turn. But I do draw a Skirk Prospector, which means I can perhaps sacrifice my goblins to live long enough. The only problem is these are the essential parts of my combo, which makes the infinite mana and the goblin I need to sacrifice. So I have to really pick carefully what I sacrifice now. My opponent uses the Basilisk Gate to pump up the token bird, and I have to sacrifice a goblin. I sacrifice my spare goblin Skirk Prospector, and I kill the bird. Then he pumps the second bird, and I choose to sacrifice the Putrid Goblin, which at this point I don't realize. I should have thought a lot about which goblin I was going to sacrifice here, because it all depends on what I draw now. A Putrid Goblin with a minus counter on it is kind of useless. My opponent then attacks for 2, and I could block, which I do with the Skirk Prospector, and then I go down to 4. That block was terrible. The Skirk Prospector is worth a lot more than just having 4 health instead of 3, but I was afraid of another Lightning Bolt. Now I draw the Storm Shriek Feral, which is also an Omen side, where you discard a card to draw 2 cards. You have to draw first and then shuffle the dragon back in. That's how Omen works. So I shuffle it back into my library, but what did I actually draw? Because that could be very important right now. If you look closely at my hand, you can see it's a first day of class and a Putrid Goblin. If I had kept the Skirk Prospector alive, I could have won now with the combo. Made infinite mana, sacrificed my Putrid Goblin infinite time to makeshift finition, and killed my opponent. But I wanted to be a 4 life to avoid a Lightning Bolt. So this just shows that I didn't know how to play to my outs. And that will cost me this game now, as he buffs one of his creatures up to 4 power and attacks with it. if I had known my deck somewhat better, I could have won this match 2 different ways. But that's the power of combo decks. You really need to know what you're doing. So I'm very glad I saw this match backwards. Or well, I saw it again. For sideboarding, I took out 4 Duresses, a Mug War Marshal and a Goblin Slitter, and put in 3 Nihil Spellbombs and 3 Cast into the Fire. I think this is wrong. I really need the Duresses in the matchup with all the disruption from my opponent. I want the Nihil Spellbombs because they get rid of Prismatic Strand. Cast into the Fire can kill 2 1/1s with 1 spell, but I don't think that's good enough, really. I'm on a Malto 6, which is fine, because my opponent's on a Malto 5, and I have everything I need. I have a Goblin Matron that can find any Goblin, and then I have an Unearth that can get it back from the graveyard, and Makeshift Munitions is really good in this matchup. It kills all the 1/1s, and it can kill my own Goblin Matron, so I'm guaranteed being able to play it back from the graveyard. I also have this Nihil Spellbomb, so all those pesky little Prismatic Strands can go away. We just need to draw a little well, and I think this is a win. Since we lost the first one, we're starting here, and I really need to win again because we lost the first one. My opponent's on a Malto 5, so I'm expecting him to play slowly, so it's fine that I don't have a turn 1 play. For my second turn, I can play my Nihil Spellbomb, and then I drew this Rakdos Canarium I can play, tapped by bouncing my mountain to my hand. However, Rakdos Canarium adds both a black and a red when it's tapped for mana, and it's a great way to gain kind of like fake card advantage, honestly. My opponent plays the Squadron Hawk and goes into the deck to find 3 more Squadron Hawks. However, they pass the turn while they search, and I can return the favor. I can play my little mountain out, and then I have my Goblin Matron I can play, and it's my turn to search my library. I find this Putrid Goblin and add it to my hand to get closer to comboing off. After all this shuffling, it's important to remember to cut each other's decks so you can be sure no one is cheating. I don't think my opponent is cheating, but get in the habit, it's a great idea. You never know. Shuffle cheating is really easy, so my opponent also cuts my deck, even though of course he trusts me. Of course he trusts me. I only make mistakes, I don't cheat. And I can show you a great example of that right now. That Putrid Goblin, that's not in play. That's supposed to be in my hand. Here I put it into play. And then my brain goes, no wait, hand. Whoopsie. My opponent then takes the Squadron Hawk and smacks me for a single damage, putting me down to 19, which hurts a lot. And the bad news is, it's only gonna get worse as my opponent plays his second Squadron Hawk. The clock has now been doubled, and I'm dead in, 10 turns? I think that's okay. My opponent plays a Boros Garrison, just as my Rakdos Canarium. They have to return a land to their hand, but it adds 2. It's my turn. I attack with the Goblin Matron, dealing 1 damage. I would have loved to trade with a Squadron Hawk, so I could bring back my Goblin Matron. I play out the Makeshift Munitions, so I have that ready for a combo, or to start removing flying threats. And then I can also play my Goblin Surgeon and make my combo unremovable, so no lightning bolt will stop it. I have a Nihil Spellbomb in case a Prismatic Strand is ever put into the graveyard. My opponent hits me for 2. The problem is my opponent actually keeps it in hand, so those Duresses I sideboarded out would be really good now. My opponent plays a Thraben Inspector, yet another creature that generates value, and gets the Clue token, which can be sacrificed for 2 mana to draw a card. And my opponent now has a full hand of cards while I'm down to 4, and even if I find a way to combo off, he can probably stop me with Prismatic Strand or some other card. But that doesn't deter me. We go forward. I play a land that gives me a life when it enters, and I do need more of those in the deck, to be honest, but I only have the 1. And then I play my Putrid Goblin. All I need now is a Skirk Prospector, and I have the combo going for infinite damage. And even if my opponent can stop it for a turn, they can't stop it forever, can they? My opponent spends 2 mana to crack the Clue to draw a card, and in response, while they have no colored mana open, I use my Makeshift Munition to get rid of his Squadron Hawk, sacrificing my Goblin Matron so I can bring it back later and find something else to put into play. Into my hand. My opponent then plays the Lumnak Veteran, which gains a life whenever he casts a creature. I don't really mind this, the 1/1s aren't that scary, and my opponent gaining life isn't really a problem for me. What is a problem is taking damage. I only have 17 lives left, and if my opponent finds a few more gates, that Basilisk Gate can start making a huge flyer attack me. Luckily, he doesn't play a gate this turn. It's my turn, and I'm trying to think what I want this turn. My opponent gaining life, I for some reason find annoying. And what I want to do is to get rid of it, and then when it's in the graveyard, I can remove it with the Nihil Spellbound. This isn't a great play, because I should neither be afraid of my opponent gaining life from creatures entering or creatures dying. But I'm thinking, if I don't kill it and remove it the same turn, I won't get a chance to remove it before he can play it from the graveyard. So I sacrifice my Putrid Goblin to kill the Luminarch Veteran. My opponent says stop and makes me wait for a moment, and I should have caught on that my opponent has something that works with my Putrid Goblin entering the graveyard, but I was thinking, oh, he probably has Prismatic Strand in hand and wants to prevent the damage. In the end, my opponent chooses to not react and simply put the Luminarch Veteran into the graveyard. My Putrid Goblin comes back with a -1/-1 counter. I crack my Nihil Spellbound, paying a black as I do to draw a card. Now this isn't the best use of a Spellbound because I'm getting rid of none of the Prismatic Strands that I had it in to get rid of. But I really needed to draw a card, and I often feel that way about Nihil Spellbound. I use it before I should because I want to dig deeper. My Putrid Goblin has a -1/-1 counter on it, which means it can't be used for comboing, because if it dies, it does not return from the graveyard as long as it has that counter. And first of class can't change that. But I do have a second Putrid Goblin in hand, that's why I feel okay using the Putrid Goblin as removal. I play an Unearth on my Goblin Matron so I can find another Goblin to add to my hand. I choose the Skirk Prospector because I have the other Putrid Goblin, and now I have the combo in hand. All I need now is a first day of class. Lightning Bolt can't stop my combo because I can just regenerate using the Goblin Surgeon. And Prismatic Strain stops my combo from one turn, but then I can just go find another win another turn. And I also know to perhaps go find my Dark Dweller Oracle this time. So all in all, I'm in a pretty good spot. My opponent plays a Faithful Sleuthing, drawing 2 and discarding 2. He discards a Battle Screech, which has flashback to make 2 1/1s. And he also discards the Prismatic Strands. That's the one way he can tap a white creature to prevent all damage from a color. So for that I'll need to remove something in the graveyard if I want to combo off, or else I will have to combo off 2 turns in a row. Which is kind of difficult since I have no first day of class yet, as far as I know anyway. My opponent then plays another Squadron Hawk. I sacrifice my useless Putrid Goblin to kill another Squadron Hawk. And now I have one in the graveyard to get back with an Unearth if I draw that, and I have one in hand if I don't get an Unearth. And I'm still not under a lot of pressure. My opponent only has 1 gate. I know he has another one in hand that he bounced with a Boros Garrison that I assume he's going to play again. And there it is. Now he has 2 gates to buff that 1 Squadron Hawk with. He passes the turn. I don't mind that Prismatic Strand in the graveyard because I have another Nihil Spellbound that I can remove it with. And then it feels like I'm clear to go off with comboing because he only has 2 mana open, so he can't play another Prismatic Strand from hand. So I exile the graveyard, but this turn he can cast it in response to it being exiled. So I can't combo this turn, but that's fine because I need to go find a first day of class if I want to win. And to do that, I have a Shred Memory. Now, it costs 3 mana. I transmute my Shred Memory, which is an activated ability used from hand, and you can find a card that has the same cost as the card you transmuted. In this case, it costs 2, so I can find my first day of class. That was a difficult sentence. I then pass the turn to my opponent. My opponent plays another Basilisk Gate, so now he can buff a creature twice for 3, which is 6, which is starting to be a lot if I have to be honest. This turn, however, my opponent will simply use 1 Basilisk Gate to pump off the Squadron Hawk for 3, so it has 4 power, and then swing in, putting me down to an entire 13. I can't remember the numbers. I have to look as it happens. I'm good at math, I promise, but I'm terrible at like adding and subtracting numbers, which is very bad when you play Magic. My opponent then chooses to play another Squadron Hawk, which I'm very happy about because that only leaves 2 mana up. There's no Prismatic Strand in the graveyard, and I know it costs 3 mana to play it from hand, so I know it's safe to combo off. and I have all the pieces in my hand. First, I play a first day of class. This allows me to put a +1/+1 count on my creatures when they enter. It also gets me an introduction to prophecy from my library, just as in last game. Now, once we resolve that, I play the Skirk Prospector, and then I forget to put a plus counter on it, and then I play the Putrid Goblin. I sacrifice it to the Skirk Prospector, it goes into the graveyard and comes back, but my opponent responds to it being the graveyard with Robin Charm. This card has 3 modes. It can shoot a creature, it can destroy an enchantment, or it can exile a graveyard at instant speed. My opponent exiles my graveyard while my Putrid Goblin is in there. I had not thought about this card, even though I know it. And even worse, if I hadn't sideboarded out my Duresses, I could have removed it from the hand, or at least seen it in the hand and not know to play directly into it. So this is a case where my main board could have saved me and my sideboard doesn't really work. I have no way to counter it, so I just have to let it happen, play this introduction to prophecy, and hope I find another Putrid Goblin. I do not. I put both on the bottom and draw another card. It's still not a Putrid Goblin, and all I have now in hand are 2 lands and no way to combo. And the worst part is, now I need 2 combo pieces. I need a Putrid Goblin and I need a first day of class if I want to win by comboing. And my opponent has 2 Squadron Hawks that look like they really want to be beefed up by some Basilisk Gates. This is looking very bad for me. All I can do now is pass the turn and watch as my opponent decides how much damage he wants to deal me this turn. He uses one of the Basilisk Gate on one of the Squadron Hawks. I could have sacrificed a Goblin to kill it, but I'll just take the 5 damage for now, as it's not lethal and I can buy another draw. And then I can preserve the Goblins I have in play for now, and hopefully that'll help me combo off. Sadly, I seem to draw another land, and that doesn't really help me with the comboing. So it's about time that we start sacrificing Goblins to kill the Squadron Hawks. I did make a misplay here. I should have sacrificed a Goblin in my turn to shoot one of the Hawks, in case my opponent had a Prismatic Strand in hand. That only lasts until end of turn, so then I could have tried again on his turn. Instead, what's going to happen is, of course, my opponent tries to buff one of the Squadron Hawks with the gates, so it becomes a much more lethal threat. I use my Goblin Matron with my makeshift munitions to kill the Hawk, and then my opponent plays the Prismatic Strands, countering that activation. And then I have to use a new Goblin in response. So it's not that big of a difference, I just still feel like it's a misplay. Of course, my opponent doesn't have that much mana and will have to use the gate and some of his other mana to use the Prismatic Strands to save that Hawk. And that stops him from using the other gate to buff the other Hawk. So I'm still alive this turn, so I have another turn to try and combo off. But now I have no way to protect my combo from a Lightning Bolt or another small removal. And I have to draw the entire combo of both First Day of Class and Putrid Goblin. It's gonna be very unlikely that I can win this one. My opponent attacks for 2, and I go down to 6. And it's likely my last turn to try and win this. My opponent plays the Lumnak Veteran, keeping suspiciously 1 red mana open, probably to stop my combo with a Lightning Bolt. I didn't draw a land, I got the second Skirk Prospector, which will allow me to at least kill that bird when it tries to come in for the kill. And maybe I can squeeze another turn out of this game, but it's unlikely it's gonna matter. My opponent still has that Prismatic Strand in the graveyard, can actually negate the get damage, so I'll have to sacrifice both of my Skirk Prospectors to kill this one Squadron Hawk. I shoot it with the first one, and my opponent is already moving it to the graveyard. I would have thought he would want to save it, but instead he finds another play. He buffs up the Thraben Inspector and then attacks with both of those creatures. And here I could block with the Skirk Prospector on the larger guy to only take 1 damage, but the problem is if I have nothing in play, there's no way I can win. So I have to take this damage and hope my opponent doesn't have the Lightning Bolt in hand. You can already see it, and there it is, and I'm dead. Good game. I made a couple of mistakes, which is unfortunate, but that's probably why I lost on the other hand. So this was my first match with the Goblin Combo deck, and I think it was a pretty strong deck. I definitely misplayed. It wasn't the deck. I could have won the first match, and if I had sideboarded correctly, I could have won the second match too. Next week, I don't know if it'll be a week or more. This is a whole tournament, but I'm posting each match separately because it's too much effort to make the whole video as one big video. If you like this, please like and subscribe. Leave me a comment saying,
Wow, you did great, but you definitely should have sacrificed me instead of the Skirk Prospector on that one turn.